Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Flee Red States, brought to you by Texas Pride Realty, brokered by Home Smart Stars. Today, we have Alastair Johnson with us. And Alastair, you have a unique story that we wanted to be sure we got out to everybody in our podcast. Can you tell us a little bit about your venture and how you came to be where you are?
Yes, we're drifters. We started off, Alison, my partner in business and life, is from Zimbabwe. I'm from South Africa. Then we got together in the UK where we lived for a while, and then it was off to Sydney, Australia for 15 years. And then we took a 1 year sabbatical about 10 years ago, in a little town called Sitges in Spain, and we've never left. So that was 2015, and it's now very much home.
Interesting. So, Spain, after you said Sydney, London,
And South Africa to start.
South Africa. Yeah.
Yeah, and there were a fair few little bits and pieces of working in various places. Alison was a nanny in Connecticut, a waitress in Ocean City, and then we both did big corporate jobs all over the world as well before we
Interesting.
settled in Spain and started this business.
So tell us a little bit. Of course, Flee Red States, what we're doing is we're helping LGBTQ and other communities who want to find a place that they feel they'd be safer, just giving them some education on where they might be, where they might want to go, because things are crazy. I'm
Yep.
not going to talk about current events right now, but things are crazy. Tell me what attracted you to Spain.
So there were several things. As I said, it was a very it wasn't a terribly well thought through decision. We were originally coming for a year. We were living in Sydney, and we just decided, well, let's go somewhere that's on the coast. We wanted a year's break. Alison had been made redundant. We had a 7-year-old kid. We thought, let's go somewhere where there's a really nice lifestyle. It's pretty laid back, good cost of living, and next to the sea. And that we looked at number of places, and Spain came up. We spoke a little bit of Spanish from some time we'd spent in Central America when we were backpacking. So we thought, oh, well, Spain will do. And we just fell into this gorgeous little town, met an amazing bunch of people, and yeah, cashed in our life basically and moved to Spain and start this business. So yeah, it was, I think we were really fortunate. We'd lived in a few places before. Three, between Sydney, Cape Town, and London, are three pretty amazing big international cities. So where we are now is pretty close to Barcelona. It's 45 minutes by public transport. You're in the center of Barcelona, but it's actually a little beach town, and Spain's great for that. And we found that's a really nice fit, and it works well for a lot of people. You can kind of choose what parts of the lifestyle you want to be involved in, which parts you don't want to, and you can drop in and out as you choose.
Okay, so you're really like beach town,
Yeah. So
Spain,
it's a
45
fun,
minutes to Barcelona.
yeah.
Okay, talk to me about what do you know much about the LGBT culture there or
Yeah.
the BIPOC community there? What can you tell us?
Yeah, so Sitges is a very famous in the community. It's actually Bear Week at the moment, so yeah, Sitges is rocking. It's one of my favorite weeks. But it's got a really large LGBT community, and it always has done. It's an odd little place. It's about 30,000 people, permanent population, as I say, 45 minutes from Barcelona, but it's got a really artistic heritage. Picasso and Dali spent quite a lot of time here. There's quite a lot of patronage of the arts it was a wealthy little town. And so it's built up this real open population, and really open attitude to people. So I always think there's my favorite illustration of this is there's a very traditional Catholic religious part to Spain, and that's pretty much Spain wide, and Sitges is no different. Yeah, okay, so it's Bear Week in Sitges, and as I say, you know, Sitges, like many other parts of Spain, it does have a strong traditional Catholic side to it. There's a big cathedral here. A lot of people still attend mass, but there's a Catholic ceremony which is the first communion for girls, and it's part of the tradition is to decorate the streets of the town with flowers. And each sort of civic group or group of shops or something like that, or sporting groups, gets a little block of the road to decorate. in Sitges, that's been extended to the gay community and queer community. So there's different queer groups that have got sections of the street, which is utterly integrated into this very traditional Catholic ceremony. And it just works. And I think that's one of the things in conversations with people from minorities, both sexual and cultural, there's a real acceptance in Spain. As long as you don't get up in other people's grills, live your life in the way you want to, and it's really accepting. So, as I say, it's Bear Week now. It's Sitges is crazy. The beaches are full. The bars are full. But equally, there's a quilting. It's the Europe's biggest quilting festival is also held in Sitges. So every the world's quilters descend, and I mean that's a very different demographic to Bear Week or Mardi Gras. But everybody just gets on with it, and yeah, you take parts of the bit you want to take part in, and you don't take part in the bits you don't want to. So it's a really fantastic culture, and it's coming from Sydney and Cape Town, which are also quite open-minded and cities with big queer communities. It's nice to. I would find it difficult to live somewhere that doesn't have that sort of open-mindedness. I think it makes for a wonderful place to live.
And I think, listen, you're coming from bigger cities to a much smaller town. You said 30,000 is the
Yeah,
basically population. That's about the size of the town I grew up in,
yeah,
and I would never go back to that. But, but, but what I am saying is that not a lot of people think about these smaller towns that are basically what we would call suburbs of the big
yeah,
city. And I am finding more and more, the more people we talk to, a lot of them are choosing these suburbs outside of these big major cities. And that's why we started looking at people who aren't living in Madrid, Barcelona, and that type of area and see where everybody else is choosing. And Stitches kept coming up over and over and over again. Like, I was like, where is this place? And why do
yeah,
people love it so much? And no one has given me any negatives about it. So, but we do have a lot of people who are coming from, especially from the United States, when they come from a big city, small towns scare them
yeah,
because because it's a big culture shock. But it doesn't sound like it's more of a the culture shock is more of how artistic and how accepting everything is, how open everything is. That would be even coming from Dallas or Houston, like Bob and I. That would be we walk into that small town. That would be a culture shock for us to see that to be so accepting. So I'm glad that that there are smaller towns like that people can because I don't want to live in the big city.
yeah.
I don't want to live in Barcelona.
Yeah, look, I think certainly it's not universal across Spain. I think there would definitely be if you went, into a small town in Extremadura, way out in the hinterland, you might encounter a much more conservative culture. Um, I'd be surprised though if it extends to the same degree you would in some other countries. So we were chatting to a guy who moved from Barcelona to a tiny, there are 96 people in his village in Extremadura. He's a Spanish gay guy. He's moved there and he's loving it. He said the socializing is there are less opportunities for socializing with his peers than there are in Barcelona, but he's made a wonderful community and he's been accepted into that community, which I find quite surprising. I think again, he's a very gregarious, outgoing, great guy. And he's, so on day one, he tapped on his neighbor's door and said, "Hi, I'm here. Nice to meet you," and made himself part of the community. So, I think it's Spain has that to it. I think coming from South Africa, there are parts of South Africa where I think that wouldn't go so well. I'm chatting to some of my friends who've been around, lived in the US. There are parts of the US I think they probably wouldn't go quite as well as it would do in Spain. But sorry, that's a bit of a long rambling answer. But I guess the smaller towns, there definitely is a perception of a more conservative, more culturally stratified way of life in those smaller towns, but I don't think it's always true. And Spain's an incredibly diverse country as well. It's about the size of Texas, 65 million people. It's a big place, and the culture in the north, up in Galicia and Asturias, up that sort of Atlantic seaboard, is incredibly different to southern Spain. Places like Seville are much more traditional, much more sort of Spanish, if you want, than those other places. So it is a really, I think there's much more to it than just Madrid, Barcelona, Valencia. There's a whole world to explore, and there's certainly, I think, a lot of acceptance in a lot of places, and that's certainly been the experience of people we've spoken to as well.
So, as somebody I'm a little cautious, not speaking Spanish.
Yeah,
Tell me what it is like to be a non-Spanish speaker, specifically English,
yep.
in Spain.
Yeah, look, it can be very difficult. We're in Catalonia, so there's a whole nother layer of complexity in that people here speak Catalan as well as Spanish. So you've got to learn two languages if you come to this corner. So places like Sitges, and this is where Spain is really interesting, is in general, it has one of the lowest levels of English second language of countries in Europe. So if you go to Portugal or the Netherlands or Germany, people tend to speak English as a second language when you encounter people. Spain doesn't, because people speak Spanish, which is already a large global language. So you can travel and work and do all that stuff without learning English. So the levels of English are low. But if you come to a town like Sitges, or you go down to the southern strip, towns like Marbella or Malaga, you'll find lots of English spoken. If you go to Extremadura, again, I keep on going back to it as an example because we were just there. No one speaks any English.
Wow.
It's really quite difficult. The biggest difference that I've found, and it's made me feel very bad about my behavior over many years. In Spain, people are unbelievably generous if you make the slightest effort. If you just try, they are patient, they are kind. I've just, for many years living in the UK and Australia, I assumed that if people didn't speak English, they were stupid. It's that terrible cultural arrogance of English first language speakers, and of really living in Spain, and just the generosity of people and the time that they give us, and that, sometimes it's sort of, you're being laughed at a bit, but it's with a kind heart. There definitely are parts of Spain where, without speaking some Spanish, you're going to get in real trouble when you go to the doctor or the mechanic, or your house is on fire or something like that. But in the vast majority of places where expats tend to live, Barcelona, Madrid, Valencia, down the southern Mediterranean coast, there are significant populations of expats, and generally the common language of those expats is English, even if they're not English native speakers. Like Sitges, when we go out, we tend to all speak English, and it might be not a single person from England or the US in the group. Two
Right.
and an Irishman and two Dutch guys and a couple of Spanish folk and some Catalans, but English is the default language across that all of those expat groups. So it tends, even with our Spanish friends, annoyingly, we end up speaking English because their English is better than our Spanish, and it's yeah. So
And I found that the same. I haven't been to Spain, but I've gone to Mexico City. Mexico City is one of my favorite places. I
yep.
don't speak Spanish, even though I grew up in Texas, which used to
Okay.
be Mexico. I should know Spanish because the population, 45 in Houston, the population 45% is Hispanic. So I should have learned. I should have. But what I did do is I pulled out my Google Translate, and the moment anyone
Yeah.
saw me trying, they went out of their way to do their best to help me. Like, it was amazing. And I feel like I'm not going to another country to assume that they speak English. I'm going to
Yeah.
assume that I have to figure it out on my own. And if they speak English and they're willing and they want to communicate, that's great, but I'm not going to make that assumption. So briefly, what we talked about, I am a man over 50.
Yeah.
And healthcare is not as over 50 as you are, Bob.
We're all
but
over 50. Let's leave it at that.
but healthcare is important to me. And we started looking at all this and I actually started looking at all this right after my first trip to Mexico City. It's like,
Yeah.
where else in the world can I live? And healthcare was an issue that I couldn't overcome in Mexico. I was like, there was things that I just couldn't overcome. But Spain, I understand, healthcare is affordable comparatively. But when it comes to working with your doctor there, what differences have you noticed? You may have not lived in the United States, but I know that Great Britain's not too much different as far as healthcare goes in the United States. What's the difference that you notice there?
Yeah, look, I think, first there's a public health system.
Mhm.
Universal health care is a right here in Spain if you're Spanish. So emergency care, if you are even as a tourist with zero insurance, if you get hit by a car, an ambulance will come, they'll take you to hospital, they'll sort you out, stabilize you, won't charge you a cent, and then say, right, now you need to sort yourself out. You're stable. So all emergency care is a basic human right and offered to everyone, regardless of who they are. If you're an expat coming to live here, you have to have private health insurance unless you're paying into Social Security. So for the vast majority of expats, you would take out private insurance. To give you a sort of an example, for our family of three, we're all with two adults over 50 and a 17-year-old kid. For top level private health care that includes hospitalizations, all sorts of stuff, doesn't include dental. There's basic dental care, so one checkup a year, but if dental's excluded from that. That costs us 1,800 euros per annum. So that's for a year for the three of us.
1,800 euros, which the euro is basically the same price of the dollar generally.
Yeah, a little bit.
1,800
You pay a little more than in
for
dollars.
three people.
Yeah.
So that's, doing math in my head, 600 per person roughly
Yeah.
for the year.
For the
I
year,
pay
and that's for exceptional healthcare. It's got no co-payments. So
And help me out here, because 600 divided by 12.
Yeah, about $50 a month.
50. No, I was getting there. I
For
mean, some of
three,
my math
for
teachers
three.
For free.
$50 a month. In Virginia or in Texas, I
Yeah.
was paying between, $500 to $600, $700 a month. And they would not kick in until I had spent $8,000 out of my pocket.
Yeah, we have this comical reaction every time we send a healthcare quote to Americans. They come back and go, so that's times 12 for the year. And we're like, no, no, no. As it says in big letters, it's an annual policy. That is your cost
Well,
for the
it's written
year.
in Latin per annum. I mean, come on now. You can't expect, people
I
with a
know we
Texas
do.
education to understand the Latin.
So in lots of countries you can get cheap healthcare. That's one thing. The weird thing about Spain, and as I say, I've lived in the UK, Australia, and South Africa. This is the best healthcare I've ever had access to.
Really?
So again, it's the quality of healthcare professionals, the range of stuff. So I've got, for example, I've got glaucoma. It's a easily manageable disease, a couple of drops every morning, it's fine. But if it does degrade, I go blind. So I go regularly to an ophthalmologist who's a lovely lady in a town 15 minutes away from us. I see her every 6 months. We go and we do a full check, pictures of the back of retinas, checks out optic nerves, does all the field of vision tests and all of that every 6 months. That's all covered by my insurance company. And I don't have to contact my insurance company. I just book it in.
Just
I can go myself. I can choose which specialist I want. So I can choose within the network of my insurance company. I can go and say, okay, well, I want, within 15 minutes of my home, I want an English speaking ophthalmologist. And that, because I live in Sitges and I've got Barcelona and another town called Villanova on the other side, I've got access to really good healthcare.
So
If you're in the middle of nowhere, you might have to travel a bit further or make some compromises. But my Spanish is pretty good. But when I speak to a doctor, I like to speak to them in English because it's nuance and complexity, and I don't want to go blind. So I'm quite happy to go for my twice annual dental checkup with a Spanish-speaking dentist. That's absolutely fine. If there's something that needs sorting out, I can get around it. But things like there's too much vocabulary and understanding ophthalmology, so we do that in English. But
so you can go anywhere to any doctor in Spain.
No, within my network. So So, and again, so this is
So
where
there's network. Okay.
health insurance company is important. So there's some really good Spanish healthcare companies, but if you went with someone like Mapfre, for example, who are a big Spanish insurer, most of their network is Spanish speaking. So you would, if you spoke fluent Spanish, not a problem at all. But then there are other insurers that we tend to work with who have big English speaking capability sort of across their network. And that, and again, if you are somewhere pretty remote, you might have to travel a long way to find a good doctor who speaks English. Anywhere down the Mediterranean coast, though, it's super simple. Madrid, Barcelona, Valencia, those places, and anywhere down the coast is really easy. But I think the other thing that we've found really, really interesting here, both in the public system and the private system, is there's a real different approach to preventative healthcare as well. The doctors here are proactive about, if you're wondering, I pulled a muscle in my chest, old man injury, and went to the doctor and said, look, I do have a history of cardiac problems with my family. I'm pretty sure this is just a muscle. And she was like, right, ECGs, get all your bloods, let's do everything just in case.
Get it out of your mind. Get the panic, get the worry out.
Absolutely. And they're proactive about checking you to see if, so getting annual tests, getting a battery of annual tests is absolutely fine. Preventative medicine to try and save you from getting to the point where they have to actually treat something is really kind of core in the way. And it's been noticeably different for us. And we've spoken to friends and colleagues about this. And it really is a sort of a way of thinking here, which is super refreshing. I think, it's nice. I'd much rather that, spend the money on tests than spend it on cures. But the healthcare is fantastic. And I'm again, pleasantly surprised. Most of our doctors are Spanish nationals, but you'll often sort of, my dermatologist is from the Ukraine, but has lived here for a long time, speaks perfect English as well, and those sorts of things. So you'll bump into people from all over the world, but the quality of care is outstanding, and the cost is, we're eligible for public healthcare. We could use public healthcare, and we do for some things, but the private healthcare is so cheap that we just keep paying it because why not?
That's very comforting to know. One that the cost, because honestly, a lot of us, the cost can just kind of eat through us. As Bob was saying. I mean, I could pay a mortgage with what it costs me every month, type of thing.
Yeah.
But the other thing is that that is a big fear when we talk to people. Is like they're like, well, I need to go somewhere they speak English, and I'm like, well, what? They have all these fears about that, and my thing is, you will figure it out. Number one, if you're put in the situation, you will probably figure it out. But unlike in the United States, most other countries, English is most a second language. You find most often that most people in other countries actually speak English as a second language. They may not be the best at it, but you can figure it out if you work together. So I don't really have that fear that, okay, I'm not going to speak the language. I know I'll figure it out. So you also talked about you have a child.
Yeah, we've got
How old is your child?
He's 17 now. We moved here when he was 7, so he's pretty much grown up in Spain now.
So what was it like for him switching from English speaking schools to go to Spain, or did he go to a school in Spain speaking English?
So because we came for a year, we made the decision not to put him in a Spanish medium school, and then we got stuck in that private school English medium, and he's in his final year at the American School of Barcelona. So he speaks with a very mid-Atlantic American twang now, which we're mixed feelings about. We were chatting over dinner to him and his American girlfriend, and I was like, oh my goodness, you can't tell the difference between the two of them.
By the way, that American accent can hinder you these days. Just saying.
He's got a very nice neutral. You couldn't pick from where in the US it's from, and then there's an odd bit of South African and Australian and British that sort of scattered through because it's a super multicultural school. About 40% Americans, 40% Spaniards from all over Spain, and then 20% are just from everywhere. It's a good mix. But look, I think, for families moving, schooling is a concern, and it is something that it has huge consequences, those decisions you take. The sort of standard wisdom is if you take a kid and drop them into a school with not a word of Spanish, they will hate it for 3 months, and after 3 months they'll love it and be fluent. And we know people who've done it, and it's hell of hard for those 3 months. You've got a very tired, cranky kid. But if they're young enough, it's easy enough. I think once you hit teens, trying to make friendship, trying to become part of a crew and be part of a peer group without speaking Spanish is a much tougher proposition, I think. So for a lot of people we know who move over with older kids, you choose an English medium school if you can afford it. They're not free. The Spanish medium schools are considerably cheaper than the English medium schools. That's yeah. I'm so looking forward to paying my last school fee in about 8 months' time. That is going to be one of those red letter days when corks are popping everywhere. But
So let's go
yeah.
down that path.
Sorry.
Your son is 17. Let's go down the path. Is he going to go to university in Spain? And what's that look like for you?
So he's probably going to take a gap year next year, and then he wants to spread his wings a little. So he's probably going to head to the UK to go to England for university. We're through an old historical twist. Alison's got a British passport, so he can get access to school there. The universities here are fantastic. A lot of kids we know have gone to university in Barcelona, especially. We know some have gone to Madrid and other universities, but Barcelona, just because where we are, there's the University of Barcelona is amazing. But there's also some great English medium universities, some private universities as well. There's a great English medium business school, which we know a lot of people have gone to as well. Spain is it's quite a progressive thinking government, and they've seen education of kids as a way of bringing in talent and bringing in skills. It was quite interesting that this year the government actually sort of set aside a team to try and help process extra university applications that were coming in from people who were originally going to the US. They were like, well, if the US doesn't want them, we'll have them, bright, hardworking, enthusiastic, ambitious kids. Yeah, send them here. We'll take them gladly. So
That's actually a discussion that I've heard a lot about, is that with some of the current administration policies attacking the intellectuals at the universities, they're limiting foreign applicants to the universities. It's my understanding that some Canadian universities are saying, hey, send the students here and we'll let them telecommute, basically. They'll live on campus in
yeah,
Canada so that they're outside US jurisdiction, but they're getting a Harvard or a Cornell or whatever degree, but they never have to enter the jurisdiction of the US. Thus, those universities can still, because I think in every country that's got this system going, the overseas students are a boon. They're cash cows. If
absolutely.
they're not using US grants to come in, they're using money from the family or whatever to go to these universities. And
Yeah.
that's just great. So I've heard of situations where the universities are collaborating to make that work.
Yeah,
And
and
the other thing is that I'm encouraging all of my friends whose children are college age to go overseas for their education. It's more affordable, and the grants they can get here can be used to pay for that education there. The student loans they get here can be used to pay for that education over there. Although they're unlikely to need those student loans overseas because it's so much
yeah.
more affordable. But I'm absolutely encouraging all of them, send your child overseas for that education, get them out and let them experience something different.
Yeah, look, I think the US still has sort of by volume the best schools in the world. I think if you and some of the best sort of technology base and the networks you're going to open up in the US are pretty unparalleled. And I think the reality is if you go to one of the big US schools, you're getting a great head start. You are going to pay a significant price to do that. Yeah. Whereas, you might not get quite the jump start you get in, if you went to Harvard or MIT or one of the big the big guns. But you're still going to some, Europe's still got some fantastic universities, and it is a
Oh,
fraction of the
amazing,
price.
amazing. And I can tell you, I've been in the professional world for a long, long time. As Leslie pointed out, I've never once had somebody say, "Oh, what school did you go to?" They'll ask you, "You have a degree?" And
Yeah,
sometimes they won't even ask that, but um, they never asked what was your GPA, what other activities did you do while you were on the board of no, nobody. That's not it. What can you do at the job? That's the question. Now, I'm not saying don't get a degree. I'm not saying get a degree,
yeah,
but I mean, whether you went to Harvard, Yale, or, University of Texas, nowhere,
yeah.
not the University of Texas bad, don't get mad. My point being, because I'm UTD here, University of Texas, Dallas, gosh. But my point is nobody's going to care later on. And I think we put so much weight on the 16 through 25-year-old age range that this is going to make your life. It's not. It's not.
Yeah, I agree, and I also, as a still to my bitter regret, somebody who dropped out of university almost at the end of it. But some of what you're learning is the academic stuff, but working together, meeting people from all over the place, interacting with people who think differently and see the world differently, having that time just to think and be, and is sort of half the gift of that. And I think that, if you travel abroad to do it, it's a bit brave. It does require some gumption, but the rewards are enormous. And
Right.
if you're looking at back to that, when people are hiring, if you can say, well, I had enough get up and go to drag myself halfway across the world to university, and I got in and I made it. I think that's much more of a selling point than I got this GPA from this university. I think there's a
I got a legacy admission because my dad went here. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
When you say, well, I went here because my grandfather went here. Well, okay, what can you do?
Yep.
Obviously your granddad was smart. What about you? That sort of thing.
Yeah.
Sorry,
I think
all the legacies out there. Sorry. Yeah.
Yeah, and it is interesting. I think that, and the world is so different now to what, when I went to university. It's a much smaller place. You can fly back and forth from the US. If you're missing home, it's doable. It's, you can Skype, you can WhatsApp. I send my mother postcards. That was, I'm that old. South Africa was that behind the times, but yeah, I think so. For the idea of kids going away to school now is much less. It's a much smaller sort of thing than it used to be. It's
Right.
much more manageable. My wife disagrees. She said, well, we're going where our son goes. I'm like, yeah, not so sure I'm ready to go live in Swansea. That's not happening.
Mom, they cut the umbilical cord 17, 18 years ago, Mom.
Yeah. The
Yeah.
two boys in the family are strongly of that point of view, but we're losing.
Yeah. So if there's anything you wanted to leave people with about the moving process, let's talk about that before we end here. What is it like to get yourself down to, a few suitcases or a shipping crate? And what was it you discovered? You know what? We don't need to hold on to that.
Yeah, look, I think the biggest thing for me is that there's the preparation for the move is where the pain is. You need to get yourself sorted out. You need to get your visa sorted out. You need to get your health insurance sorted out. You need to work out how your tax is going to be impacted. Should I move after the 31st of June or before, because it changes when the tax year falls? How do I manage investments? So things like that makes a fundamental difference to what your lifestyle is going to be on this side, and putting some thought into where you're going to live once you arrive, and understanding what that sort of, how much it's going to cost you. So putting in some effort prior to your move and learning a bit of the local language, if you can find the time, makes such an enormous difference. So once the less stuff you move with, if you can't fit it in a backpack, you shouldn't take it. I'm a little ruthless about these things. But I know people who've moved their entire house, lock, stock, and barrel, chucked it in a couple of shipping containers and moved it over, and that works for some people. I love the fact that, you live in a magical place here. There's markets and shops, and
People don't think about that because you can get it again. Like this set of glasses, your great Aunt Stella gave you these set of glasses. This is not great Aunt Stella anymore. She's not going to care, and they sell glassware wherever you're going.
They do. There's an
Yeah.
IKEA just up the road if you love your IKEA glasses.
I think one of the things I've mentioned before is don't pack that many clothes. And there may be a couple special things you need. There are clothes wherever you go,
Yep.
and maybe you need an update anyway.
Yeah, and I tell you, I think there's, I think there's something quite refreshing as well. We came over for a year, so we put a ton of our stuff in storage in Australia, because the idea was we were going to go back and sort of go back to the life we were living. Sort of after a year, we were like, we really have missed very, very little of what's in those boxes. So yeah, we went back to Australia, got rid of a whole ton of it, and really brought over, we still brought over way more than we should have. And a whole lot of stuff, when it got here, we were like, we really shouldn't have paid to ship that over. But most of it was stuff that you don't need, or it's, or don't particularly like, or, it just doesn't fit into a new life either. I think it's a good opportunity to reassess what you have and what you need. But I do think the biggest thing that I think you alluded to earlier, when you're talking about Mexico, is to go in with an open mind and kind of an open heart. It's a bit trite, but it's, if you engage with the place, if you bring yourself and all your preconceptions and your way of living to somewhere, then you've not a hell of a lot of point in moving. I've got an English friend who I've known for a long time, and I really like him. He's a fantastic guy, but he rails at Spanish efficiency and inefficiency. I'm like, dude, you should just move to Germany or Switzerland. You like, Spain is never going to change. You can be perpetually angry here, but for God's sake, the sun shines, and we can buy a beer for €1.80 in a beach bar that's playing cool tunes, looking at the Mediterranean. Why do you care that the guy took 5 minutes to bring it? Like, yeah,
that's the warning that people keep giving me, is like, nothing moves fast. There is no 45-minute dinner if you're going out. like you have to go with what that style is. And what I've seen a lot of especially Americans complain about, like, well, nothing's open on this day, or nothing's open at this time of day, and like, that's the way things are. You just have to, if you're not going to kind of blend in or try to assimilate a little, then you are going to be uncomfortable. You are going to be left out. You are going to be, feeling like you don't belong. And partially assimilating is part of what you have to do to kind of go there. And frankly, although the slower pace life kind of scares me, I kind of feel like I might really learn to love it.
Oh, I tell you what, it is. Once you get the hang of it, it's addictive.
Give us an example of what that means to you. Sorry, I didn't mean to step on you. What is this slow? What's something like, if I came there and stayed a month, what would be something I would be like, that's what he meant?
I'll give you the two examples that I use often. If you go to dinner here in Spain, and you book a table for 8 p.m., go and sit down, there is never going to be a table booked after you. You can finish your meal, finish your glass of wine, and you can sit around that table, not order food or drinks until the restaurant closes, chatting. And they've got a word for it. They call it sobremesa, which is basically on top of the table. And you're just hanging out, socializing, being with people. That's your table for the night. Enjoy it. And there's not this pressure to, so when you sit down, you might wait a few minutes for your waiter to appear. Dinner takes all evening if you wanted to. And it's just this completely different approach to socializing and being with people and being in public space, where you share that space and you're in it together, and you should enjoy it together. And I find it fascinating compared to eating in Australia or eating in the UK or eating in the US, where it's like, you haven't ordered something for 3 minutes. Here's your bill. Pay it on your way out the door. that's just would never happen here. You know, if it did, they'd burn the place down. And then the other one was that you're alluding to of things being open. We've got 2 garden centres in town in Sidges. Neither of them open on a Sunday, which is when most people do their gardening. And when I first got here, I was like, that's insane. Like, how can you not open a garden centre on Sunday? When I asked one of the guys who works there, I said, how come you guys don't open on a Sunday? And he just looked at me as, Sunday's family day. It's when you spend time with your family. Why would we open? If you want something for the garden, come on Saturday. Come during the week. Plan your week.
And your shit
Sunday,
out, people.
yeah, Sunday, I'm on the beach, same as you, with my family. Why would I come to work? Like, and it's just this wonderful. They would probably make more money if they opened on Sunday, but they make enough money. They live.
But
a
it's
good
not
life.
about the money for them.
They spend time with their families. They spend time enjoying themselves. It's not that Spanish people don't work hard. There's a big misnomer around that. Spanish people do work hard. They're not a the sort of stereotype lazy nation. They're not that at all, in my experience. But they really do carve out time for family, for friends, for enjoying life, and enjoying what you have. This is Spain is beautiful. The food's good. The wine's wonderful. The place is wonderful. People spend time enjoying that and spend time as a community, talking to each other, hanging out. We always see little old Spanish ladies sitting on benches all over the place, 3 of them sitting in a row, nattering away. And it's absolutely standard. You go out, you spend time with people, and you enjoy the life. And it's, having lived it now, I really find it hard to imagine giving that up. I'm a fairly antisocial person, but it's just being in a sense of community and a sense that we're all in this together is quite distinct from some of the other places that I've been, and I really, really do enjoy it.
Okay, so final question here. We have yet to talk about movingtospain.com, which is how I ran into you and your wife. And I'm sorry, we've been talking all about Spain, but not promoting the great work you're doing. Tell us about that.
Yeah, look, moving to Spain, the one stereotype that is true is Spain's bureaucracy and red tape suck. It's difficult. If you apply for a visa, for example, in the US, each consulate in the US will interpret the requirements for paperwork slightly differently. So if you submitted an application in Houston, it would be different to the one in LA. We built a business because we went through moving to Spain, and it's difficult. So we found great lawyers, health insurance companies that focus on expats, tax specialists who understand expat requirements, real estate people and mortgage brokers who understand that you don't have a Spanish credit history or rental history, so they'll work with you. And we've built this network of really specialized partners that look after all the steps of moving to Spain. So what we've tried to do is just do what it says on the box. We make moving to Spain easy. So you can talk to us, you can talk to our partners, you can use the resources on the website. And basically, that's what we do. There's a vastly more detailed explanation, but that's the high level top of the box.
So it sounds like you work with professionals all over Spain. Is that correct?
Yeah, we do, and it depends on what the service is. So, for example, our immigration lawyers are based in Barcelona, and they've got offices in Madrid and Valencia. But those sorts of services, putting together a visa application, is the same all across Spain. And, they can manage that. Our real estate people, we've got people in each area, because that's a very specific. If you want somebody to find you the perfect house to live in on your rental budget of 1,500 euros a month in Murcia, we need Jessica there who knows Murcia real estate inside and out. So we've got some partners who are Spain-wide, where that service makes sense, and then some that are very location specific. It's half of Alison's job is bringing new partners on, because our clients keep on coming back to us and saying, gee whiz, I'd really love to know who's the best person to get my 3 dogs from Boston to Seville. And then we're like, okay, right, we need a pet relocation specialist. And so now we've got one of those, and we keep on adding blocks. There's an endless list of services, but what we've tried to do is start with the most essential and common. So yeah, Your visa is the first thing you have to sort out. Are you going to be able to come to Spain? Health insurance generally you need for your visa. Look at tax. Does this make financial sense? And then find somewhere to live. So those are the four big beasts. Once you've got over those, then there's all sorts of little bits and bobs that we can help you with as well. But those four big blocks are the core ones of our business.
So, and so I'm sure there's more of this on your website. Is your fee inclusive of all those services, or do you just help get us to the service providers?
So we've got a couple of different models. So you can, but essentially what we'll always do is hand you off to a service provider to work directly with them, and they will quote you for their services, because I can't tell you what your visa application will cost, because it'll depend on what documentation you require, what has to be translated, which consulate you're going into. So we charge a standard consultation with our immigration lawyer partner. You'd meet with them, discuss which visa fits best, what are the requirements, and then they would quote you for that work. Tax is the same. You would meet with our tax advisor. He'd give you a rough idea of what your tax liability may be and the things you need to consider. And then if you wanted to engage them to manage your tax ongoing once you're in Spain, he would quote you for that, and you'd deal with Louis' company directly. So we're kind of like an introductory service. We've got some services that we do. Alison and I do immigration coaching. So if you've got any concerns about any part of moving to Spain, you can chat to us. We've got packages where we wrap up a range of services into moving to Spain planning packages, and you can all the details of those are on the movingtospain.com website.
Excellent. So movingtospain.com. Thank you for being here. We really appreciate you. Maybe in 6 months we have you come back on and we'll have an update.
That'll be fantastic. As I said, Bear Week this week, 6 months time, it's Mardi Gras, so we can.
Ooh. Tell Alison we want her here. Take care.
She's much more fun than I am, I can promise you that.
I can only imagine. I can only imagine.
It's been lovely to meet you guys, and I hope you have a wonderful day. And we're heading out to town tonight, so we'll have a drink for you out there. Glass of cava for sure.
Take care.
Thanks so much, Alastair. Appreciate it.
Cheers, guys. Bye.